Handmaid's Tale came to Hulu is probably the best adaptation of Margaret Atwood's novel. Describing the show isn't as simple as saying that it's good or that it's well done. It's morbid, cruel, frankly, it's hard to watch. Though I say that as a huge compliment. It's hard to watch because the show assaults your ideas on morality, religion, and society. There's several scenes I could have shown to represent how great the show is, but I figure no scenes showed the absolute cage match that this show is, rather than the hanging scene with Emily and her unnamed lover. Also, this contains spoilers for The Handmaid's Tale Season 1, so you've been warned. And don't forget, it's a scene about a hanging, so if you're not okay with that kind of thing, don't watch the video. We've all been taught how the plot diagram works and how it's used in virtually every story. However, we tend to think of it on a macro level rather than a micro level. That being, we tend to think of it spanning over a whole movie or a whole show, but I believe you can also think of the plot diagram on a micro level, as in the plot diagram can be used to describe the fluctuation of a particular scene. In this case, I think it's absolutely true. Emily and her lover walking up to the van might seem like filler or pacing at first viewing, but there's actually a lot going on here visually. The composition of the shot actually tells a story of its own. They designed the shot so Gilead appears to be crushing down on Emily literally and figuratively. She's the focus of the shot, but she's all the way at the bottom of the frame. The hulking building fills in all of the negative space between subjects. Everything in the frame is much larger than her, even down to the two men escorting her. She's visually overwhelmed by the masculinity and intolerance of Gilead. This last detail really sells the visual story going on here, and that is the color. Everything in the frame, other than Emily, almost completely lacks color. It's all black and white, whereas Emily wears one of the most provocative colors, red. Now, red can mean several things when we start to talk about symbolism. It could mean danger, anger, love, violence, blood. The list really keeps going. Though in this case it's used as a branding. It indicates the individual wearing it is a handmaid. This works perfectly in conjunction with the other traits associated with the color red. It's both a branding of social class and a symbol of how much violence, oppression, and anger these characters endure. That's just one example of how well color is used in this show and the book. The creators of The Handmaid's Tale place a lot of value on the subtleties and subliminal effects of color. Once Emily and her lover enter the van, we start getting into the rising action of this micro story. Once the escort slams the door shut, it's dead silence. All we can hear is the hum of the van's engine and the sound of its wheels going over bumps in the road. The way the rest of this micro-story is written strikes me as realism. It isn't over-dramatized like we see so often in Hollywood productions. Notice how there is a brief moment where both characters are just processing what just happened and what's about to happen. The silence strengthens that, and also works as a tool to build suspense. We're shown a close-up shot, reverse shot, though something is a little different than what we're used to. A standard shot, reverse shot would look a little something like this, where the characters are on the opposite far third of the frame. The director knows that, and chose to put those characters in the closer third to further create some suspense. With the next few cuts, we start to see where the realism of this microstory really comes into play. Rather than show Emily and the Martha having a hysterical, emotional breakdown, they paint a picture of what the characters are feeling through subtleties. The look on Emily's face in this frame is far more powerful and realistic than showing her hysterical with tears running down her face. We can tell that something truly internal is happening. Her watery eyes just scream melancholy and tragedy on an internal level. This particular frame shows how high level the creative forces behind this show are. The director's choice to put her close up on the right side of the frame, Alexis Bledel showing ever so subtly that she's sad. She's really just like scrunching her eyebrow a little bit. Just by looking at her eyes you can really tell what she's feeling. Then we have the composer's choice to fade in the music at the perfect spot. It's also incredibly subtle, but all of the little things build up to create a profound effect on the viewer. The rising action continues as the van makes its way to its destination. The characters get more emotional the closer they get, though they haven't gone into full-blown dramatic hysteria. The climax begins when the van finally makes its stop. The unwavering gaze between our two characters show the terror and melancholy that they experience. Rather than frantically panicking, they tense up, frozen by fear, shocked by tragedy. The wide shot appropriately shows us the relationship between the two characters, as well as what's about to happen. Emily and her lover take up most of the frame, but through the window we can see a noose and a bunch of guardians waiting for the van to stop. As Gilead's muscle jerks Emily's lover out of the van, we're shown a short burst of hysteria. But that's it, only a brief moment. Notice how the camera does not follow Emily's lover. It stays back, right where it was, now showing Emily's point of view. From that, we can start to infer that this scene really isn't about the hanging. It's about Emily's reaction to the hanging. I mean, her lover doesn't even have a name. In the credits, she's just listed as Martha, which just shows her social class, not her actual name. On a macro level, this Martha doesn't even really have a story, but Emily certainly does. This scene proves to be a real turning point for Emily's character, and the choice to do this scene as a long take wide shot in Emily's point of view does not let us miss a single beat of this tragic moment for Emily. I think a more sophomoric storyteller would have focused on the hanging itself. At first glance, it might seem like what's important in this scene. A cinematic hanging with lots of close-ups and slow motion would make for an exciting scene, certainly. However, they chose to play to the story on a macro level in this micro story. And it works. This scene isn't necessarily a tearjerker, but it definitely gives you the feeling of discomfort, or it might even make you feel disturbed. Recently, the long tape has kind of become a cliche in film and TV, particularly for when the director wants to show off their ability. However, in this scene, it really doesn't feel like they're just trying to show off. It doesn't feel like they're being artsy for the sake of being artsy. The long take actually has a purpose here. It's to sit back and stay in the point of view of Emily and not let us miss a single beat of that moment. The director wants us to live in that moment just like Emily is. That is much more powerful than a ultra cinematic scene with slow motion and close-ups. For falling action and resolution for this microstory, we really just have the guard shutting the door and the van driving off as Emily sobs. So really there's not a whole lot to talk about there that I haven't talked about already. It's just further strengthening that argument that this scene is about Emily and not about her lover being hanged. So there it is, the genius of The Handmaid's Tale. I cannot stress to you how good this show is. The quality of this show, as in, the acting, the writing, and the cinematography, all of it stays fairly consistent throughout the first and second season. There may be a few questionable writing decisions in the second season, but it's certainly nothing that ruins the whole experience. So if you haven't watched this show, or if you haven't finished watching this show, go do it now, because seriously, this shit is amazing. Thank you so much for watching. You made it to this point, so I haven't bored you to tears, so I'd ask you to consider subscribing and giving the video a like. It helps me out a lot. This is actually the first Cutaway video ever. Now, I know the video wasn't perfect. There's certainly some issues that I still have to work out, like I don't have a consistent environment to record my voice in yet, so you can kind of tell where I'm splicing in edits. But with time, that will be resolved. And I'd really like to know what you guys thought of the video. I actually do everything I possibly can for the videos on this channel. Everything from composing the music, to editing, doing the voiceover, and also writing the script. If there was anything you think I could really improve on, let me know. If there was anything that you thought I did really well, also let me know. So don't let the bastards keep you down, and have a wonderful day.